Welcome to the Notes to My Legal Self, AI Insights, where law and AI collide. Get ready to level up your legal game with us. We've got career advice, cutting-edge developments, mind-blowing legal tech, and more. Know someone making waves in the legal AI world? Nominate them, or even nominate yourself. We love courageous souls. And don't forget, we want to hear from you too. Ask questions, drop comments. Let's build a community of legal superheroes. But here's the deal. We're all about to have a blast. AI may be serious, but we're here to make it fun. So buckle up, get ready to power up, and let's embark on this exciting journey together. Now, let's introduce your fearless host, Olga Mack. Get ready to dive into the awesomeness of Notes to My Legal Self, AI Insights. Let's go.
Well, hello. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you all. We have a very special guest. I've interviewed all kinds of folks, from general counsel to builders to law firm leaders to government leaders. But I believe this is the very first time I will have a sitting judge on my show. So first time for everything. Really excited for this conversation. I hope you ask questions. You know, this is not a courtroom, but however, we have a judge here. So be respectful, be mindful. Remember the function of judiciary to be fair, not take political side. You know, be a good human first and do whatever it is you would do if you were in a courtroom, whether you are a member of the bar or not. So with that in mind, hello, Judge. Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. It is good to have a conversation with you. Please introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Olga, for having me. My name is Scott Schlegel. I am a judge in the state of Louisiana. I currently sit on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal. Prior to that, I was on the district court, the trial court, for 10 years in Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, and currently serve as the Louisiana Supreme Court Technology Commission chair.
I am so excited to have this conversation. You're one of the few members of the judiciary who's active on LinkedIn. And you are even in a smaller circle of people who is active about technology, the fact that it's here, how we can get prepared, what issues we should consider. So really excited about this conversation. You've definitely had a very rich judiciary career. However, before you become a judge, one must have been a normal human and had other adventures. So what was your other human adventures?
Yeah, still a human, Olga, even though now in this AI world, who can tell? But, prior to taking the bench, I was a prosecutor in Jefferson Parish, Louisiana. When you fly into the New Orleans airport, you're flying into Jefferson Parish. It's my hometown. Both my wife and I are born and raised here in Jefferson Parish. So I served as a prosecutor for a number of years, started as domestic violence prosecutor and handled, thousands of criminal cases. And before that, I was worked at a big downtown law firm doing products liability defense. So I've handled civil, criminal, domestic, you name it. As a practitioner, we did it.
I love the confirmation that you're not a bot. Thank you for that.
Very welcome.
It is, it was a subtle nudge, but thank you. What I love about, to be clear, you have a groupie here. I follow you on LinkedIn. I get your newsletter. It puts a smile on my face every time I open my inbox and there's a message from the judge telling me about the future of law. I love it. This cannot get any better. So if you want to have that experience, please follow the judge. He knows what he's talking about. What I love about your posts and your messages is optimism. Even though we're all trained in skepticism, you have a lot of optimism. Tell me how you got to the optimistic place.
Well, look, the justice system affects us all. And, I always try and say, I don't believe in the not in my backyard type mentality. It's all our backyard. And as a prosecutor for as many years as I did it, and you just see the inefficiencies in the system, you just want to wake up and make sure that the system is better today than it was yesterday. And so if you have the outlook of, how can I improve the system? How can I make it better for everyone? Then you wake up with a smile on your face and you keep moving forward. And, in this day and age of technology and AI, you just got to smile. It's way too much fun to not be playing with these things.
Yeah, and technology has a sense of humor. It's interesting. I believe you've implemented a few pieces of technology in your courtroom. well before actually, this whole new enthusiasm about AI. So it's your interest for technology generally is much wider. AI just happens to be a flavor du jour today. Share about sort of your experiences of putting technology in the courtroom. Why? How? What did your peers think?
Yeah,
I
sure.
really want to know that, because as somebody who clerked an extern, I know for a fact that judges care about what that the guy next door or gal next door thinks about him.
Well, I mean, you're exactly right about the AI being the shiny new object. And I always try and tell everybody, look, you should be using AI, you should be experimenting with it, you should be practicing with it, you should learn how to use that tool. But it's the shiny new object that we have so much more to even get there in the justice system, criminal and civil justice system, that, let's just start with the basics. How about calendaring? When I first took the bench in 2013, everybody, if you've ever seen me speak, this is my first go-to, that big red book that every minute clerk has, if you're in the civil or criminal. And the fact that you have to place a phone call to leave a voicemail to find out what the court has for a motion for summary judgment or an exception of no cause of action, or you have to send a runner to get a date, and no one's even crossed that date with opposing counsel to make sure it works for everybody. The mind-numbing inefficiency of that big red book drove me crazy. So when I first took the bench, I took that big red book from my minute clerk, and you can imagine, Olga, how I was badmouthed for quite some time for doing that. But look, I know my calendar is, I know my calendar a year in advance. So I put the calendar online. Motions at 10, pre-trials at 9 o'clock, so lawyers aren't sitting around wasting their time. Look online, call opposing counsel, make sure it works for everybody, and dump it on your Outlook calendar with a Zoom link before Zoom was a word. It cost me $150 a year. How is that not a simple, easy step that has nothing to do with security issues or anything along those lines?
I love it. I mean, the good news is, by the time you got there, the usage of the Pony Express has stopped a long time ago. So you didn't have to go back all the way in history, but just a little bit.
I don't know. They still have wire baskets where you just drop that piece of paper in the next wire basket. I guarantee that still happens across the country.
You know what? I've seen that happen. It does happen. Well, let's focus on AI. Because AI is here and it's coming to town near you. It's coming to your courtroom. It's coming to your office. It is already part of the legal system. I love your message, how it is a necessity and not an option. Tell me how you think about it. Tell me how you prepare in your courtroom. How can we join our hands and peacefully, in a intentional manner, across that digital transformation bridge?
Well, it's not going to be peaceful all the time, and it's certainly not easy. The implementation of anything new is, again, I go back to, especially in the justice system, is very difficult. And it should be in the justice system. The leaders of the justice system are the judges, and we're jurists. We're not technologists, and technologists are not jurists. So to mesh these two together is very difficult. You can come and bring to me any, ChatGPT, any LLM that you want to throw it my way. But if you don't understand our workflows, you don't understand, our speech patterns, you don't understand voir dire and Boykin forms and all these things, you can throw as much tech as you want. It's not going to stick. And so the first step is really just truly understanding your workflow, building your partnerships, because in the justice system, it's not just the judge. You have the clerk of court, the DA's office, the public defender's office, the members of the bar, the sheriff's office. You have so many different agencies with their own budgets, their own technological requirements, their own technological competence. It's very difficult to put all of these things together. And so, that's really where you need to start before you even start worrying about your tech stack. Do I want Claude? Do I want ChatGPT? Do I want an enterprise level? And again, we're jurists, so we don't even understand that terminology. So that's the biggest challenge, is getting us all on the same page so we know what's even available for our tech stack so that we can move the ball forward.
So you had a little bit of experience of doing this with calendar, for example.
Yep.
And clearly it was an adventure. Now AI is here and you have all this other conversation of what could possibly be different in the courtroom.
Right.
Using example of the calendar or anything else for that matter, how can a judge who is committed to justice system, who wants to do the right thing, understands that technology is a big part of this journey, what are the steps to build consensus, with public defender, with the prosecutor, with the clerks, with everyone? How do you bring everyone on board? What steps did you take, say, with calendar?
That's one of the main reasons I became a judge, is because when the judge calls, most people come in and have a sit down with you. So that was why I ran for judge in the first place, is because I wanted to take these inefficiencies and use the judge title in front of my name to get people to the table. And once you get them to the table, you just have to understand, reduce as many barriers as you can to show them what's possible. I like to say, everything that I do, even today, is trying to show people that the 4-minute mile is possible. When the 4-minute mile was broken, it took 80 years or so to even break the 4-minute mile. But once it was broken, everybody was breaking the 4-minute mile. Now we have high schoolers running the 4-minute mile. And so being able to show people that it is possible, it's not as difficult, at least the first few steps are not as difficult, so that we can look 3 to 5 years down the road and start moving forward and telling people it doesn't necessarily have to be that expensive, although it does get expensive. And be okay with failing. You fail quickly, though. Fail, iterate. And that's really what's the challenge, is getting people to just start the process. So if you don't start with a digital calendar from the paper calendar, the next iteration of AI looking at the different types of hearings that are being held, how many are being held, how long it takes each one of them to be held, AI can't do anything with that piece of paper or that big red book. And so the first step is really just digitizing the processes, even with the clerks of court, digitizing the clerk of court system so that we can determine, all right, well, if it's a motion for summary judgment on a slip and fall, that typically takes the court about 20 minutes or so. And so how many can I set at 10 o'clock for those types of slip and fall? And that's where AI will really get helpful for the courts. Once you've set the foundation, the problem is most courts don't have the foundation to layer the AI on top in order to build in those efficiencies. I should be able to say, hey, look, I'm available on Mondays and Tuesdays for civil. And if the records have been digitized, AI can produce that calendar in a very efficient way so that you're not sitting at the DMV like we all, look, Olga, I don't know about you, but I hate the DMV. And that's because you have to sit there.
I'm not going to profess my love for DMV on this show.
Yeah.
So I think I'm with you, Judge, here. And not only because you're a judge, as you pointed out, people happen to come to the table and at least politely nod. I actually am with you here.
Right. Yeah. And so that's the whole thing. It's the DMV model. Why do we have the DMV model? Look, in criminal, I would handle 100 cases on a criminal docket on any given day. Oh, so let's tell everybody to come at 9 o'clock and sit there and wait until your case is called. People have to work. They have to go to school. They have to drop their kids off at school. They have to go to the doctor's appointment. So why am I making everybody show up at 9? And because of the digital calendar, I was able to stagger. I was able to tell them, look, you can come at 9, 10, or 11. I don't care. There's no way I'm getting to 100 cases at 9 o'clock. And I'd let the criminal defendants select the time. I gave the date. But again, that's a lot of manual labor or manual entry points for me. But if I was able to layer AI on that, it could simply generate it, give people options. Again, I'm not, I'm picking the day, but I don't mind the time because I'm there all day anyway. And let AI do the work for you.
Yeah. No, I've been in courtrooms that, you come in and right in the morning, it's a lot of people. It's like the most popular time. And of course, not everyone is going to be heard at one. And so everyone's sitting there for 3 to 4 hours watching as the last guy speaks alone. I mean, that's basically the experience. So and depending on who you are, some people prefer beginning or the end. They like being cheered on or they like being the one and only. So there is some strategy when you're on the other side. Zeroing in on AI, there's a lot of buzz, a lot of talk, and sometimes when people talk, it doesn't necessarily mean they do, it just means they talk a lot and then they write a lot and all of that, but there may not necessarily be action. Are you aside from a few cases where people cite to non-existent cases, do you see any practical implications, or do you feel the presence of AI in the courthouse, in your courtroom today? And if yes, how? And if no, what do you think is going to be the first sighting of that AI creature in the courtroom?
Well, I think you can certainly feel it in the practice of law. The lawyers are using it. The real question is, are they using it well? Are they, paying attention to confidentiality issues? Are they using, the free ChatGPT, or are they using the ChatGPT where the plus version where you pay for it? Are they using Anthropic's and Claude? Or are they building out LLMs? And I know that there are a number of firms that are building their own LLMs across their firm data, and then whether or not they're getting consent from their clients. So there's a lot of issues out there that I know that lawyers are starting to work through, and I encourage you lawyers to use the product. I'm not a fan of court orders. I don't think court orders are proper. We already have robust ethics and professionalism rules that guide us down that road. And thankfully, the Louisiana Supreme Court just came out with a letter on the engagement or the enhancements of AI and the fact that it's emerging. And the Supreme Court in Louisiana, at least, has said our guidelines, our ethics, and our rules of professionalism are robust enough to handle this. Now, remember them when you are considering using AI. You're not going to draft a brief and allow it to hallucinate and give it to the court without being, putting yourself up for potential sanctions. That's whether a law clerk did it, whether you did it and didn't understand what you're looking at, or whether you're using, an LLM to create it for you. But again, as long as lawyers start to consider it and play with it before you actually put it into play and put it into action, I think you'll be fine. So I truly encourage lawyers to start at least using it for little things, just so you can familiarize yourself with it to determine if and when it's appropriate for the practice of law. We've been using AI and e-discovery for many, many years now. So it's just the next iteration of that. And when you're looking at large review of large documents, I remember when I was at the firm, I had to go to I'm sure you did this, Olga, you got to go to a warehouse, and you got boxes and boxes of documents stacked from, ceiling to floor. And you spent 2 weeks going through that stuff. Thank God we have AI.
You bring some memories. I am a former litigator. I started as a litigator, sitting on the floor, surrounded by boxes. And the saddest thing my husband said he ever saw is when I was pregnant doing that. He basically said, I felt as a failure as a husband when I saw my pregnant wife sitting surrounded by boxes on the floor. He was very encouraging for me to go in the house at that point. He had an opinion about my future.
Right.
So
brutal.
Absolutely right. No, and believe it or not, this is, I still talk to folks at law firms that still, because not everything has been digitized, and depending how far back your litigation goes, you may still have to be going to the warehouse dealing with all that stuff, or having a truckload delivered to you. So this is still our reality today. I want to talk a little, well, actually, before I go into substantive question, you mentioned that lawyers are not technologists are not lawyers. There is sort of, Greek-speaking folks in the English-speaking world type of experience when you have lawyers and technologists on both sides. So, yet we also have this ethical responsibilities, and some folks are more technically inclined than others. Do you, as a lawyer who is actually trying to figure this out and educating and playing, do you recommend to go as far as like taking certification? Like, there's a question I believe from a student we have, at what point do you feel that you are competent enough in the current technologies that you're not in danger to yourself, your ability to practice law, and to folks around you? Like, at what point you are a knowledgeable, competent operator?
Yeah, it's a great question. And lawyers are used to being constant learners. I mean, that's what we do. And so I don't see this as big of a problem. the more and more you hear AI, ChatGPT, the more and more people will get curious and will go down that road. It's no different than learning the new technologies in the courtroom, that if you're a practitioner and you're a trial lawyer, you go and play with the technology in the courtroom before you actually go into court. At least good ones do. Bad ones don't ever come and try the technology, and then they get stuck in the middle of the jury with the judge just staring at you going, I offered my courtroom for you. If you would have just come and practiced, you'd have been fine. So there's always going to be a little bit of that with lawyers who want to continue to learn and continue to do a good job. I liken this to OneDrive or Dropbox. Olga, you remember when Dropbox came out, and every human being that started Dropbox, you had your first adopters. And when the lawyers had the Dropbox, they were like, oh my God, you're putting client files in the cloud. And everybody was up in arms that you were violating all of your ethical obligations. You were violating every rule of professionalism and confidentiality. It was a big deal.
I mean, the transition to cloud was a big deal. Like I remember a conversation about on-prem, off-prem. This was mind-blowing. Thank God for pandemic, because that pretty much sealed that we are now solidly in the cloud. But yes, right. I remember.
and you were committing malpractice if you were using the cloud. Now you're committing malpractice if you're not using the cloud. But people have learned also, right? So people have learned you better not be using a free version of any cloud-based storage facility. You better make sure that it has the right security levels. You better make sure that you're paying for the right level of security. If you have HIPAA compliant files in the cloud, you better make sure it's a HIPAA compliant cloud storage. And so I kind of see the same thing that we're going to see with these LLMs. And again, most people who say LLM, it's very confusing for us lawyers and judges who think that's a master's of law. So those that are starting to use LLMs are kind of like the folks that started using Dropbox. Everybody's looking at them going, you're crazy. But as we go down this road, everybody will start to realize, oh, you were crazy then, but now it's now matured. Now we're using enterprise level LLMs. Now we're making sure that our citations are correct, because Lexis and Westlaw and VLEX are actually building the two together now, so that we're not hallucinating when we're providing cases to the court. So I kind of use that as the example of where I see this going. It's still in its nascent phase. It's still early. It's still the early adopters are playing around with it and messing around with it. But it will be common practice, just like Dropbox is now.
Okay, good. Okay, and I agree with you that LLM, every time you tell it to a lawyer, they're not sure in which direction the conversation will go. Am I underqualified to speak on this conversation because I didn't get my tax LLM? Or is it going to be an AI conversation? It is confusing. Let's talk about sort of efficiencies in the courtroom, sort of things like backlog. We all know, you sue somebody today, you're likely to get resolution 5 years from now. Even your smallest dispute will take you at least a year and a half if you go through all the sort of processes. So let's talk about it. Is there a potential for AI? What do you see for AI to address that backlog, improvement of efficiency in the legal system?
Well, I mean, that's two different types. There's two questions, I guess, to that one. One, how do you use AI to make your court more efficient, more effective, so that you can process the cases quicker in a more efficient manner? Because I know an MSJ takes 20 minutes, exception, of no right of action takes 10 minutes, so on and so forth. So from that perspective, it can help significantly with the AI, that can help significantly with the backlog, because we're using it from that perspective. The other question, I think, that's behind that question is whether or not we should be giving over some level of cases or giving over some level of judicial decision-making process to AI. And I am not a fan of turning over any judicial decision-making process to AI. I still like the human touch. I don't want the robot overlords to come in and take over this side of it. I think that, justice also has a feel to it. There is a feel to justice. And I think that you need to have the ability to badmouth Judge Schlegel if you think I'm the worst judge ever and take me up to the Supreme Court, or as opposed to, look, that Bard guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I wish we would have gone with ChatGPT or Claude, because those people, they know what they're talking about. I'm not a fan of that. If you want to do it in the private sector and, mediate and arbitrate with it on a certain level of cases and everybody comes to that agreement, that's fine. But I don't think once it gets to the justice system that we should be turning it over to the bot overlords.
Interesting. Let me think about it. That's a very interesting perspective. How about the access to justice?
Yeah.
You can also, there's I thank you for pointing out that efficiency is different from backlog. Those are related, overlapping, but not entirely the same issues. Access to justice is a separate issue as well. I didn't couple it with all other ones. How do you address that with AI?
Yeah, that's where I see the most significant use for these tools, just from the basics. So if you go to any court website, that's assuming there's a court website, we have so much old information on our court websites, again, if you have one. And so using AI to kind of scrape websites, scrape all the old handbooks, put together and make the information more readily available and more accessible is a easy thing to do with these tools, these AI tools. I mean, look, I'm sure you've seen my deep fake videos. I do those as a kind of, again, a thought exercise to scare people, one, and also two, to show you how you can actually use deep fake videos for access to justice issues. It takes a lot of, at least when we were making videos for walking jurors through how to get, how do I dress? How do I appear? How do I come to court? What are my next steps? I mean, you could easily in 5 minutes take any old handbook, dump it into AI, create a script, dump it into one of these video deepfake programs that I use, create a very well-designed video presentation for people to figure out, how do I get a protective order? How do I, file for a divorce without giving legal advice, just the functionality of how these things work, and get people comfortable with it and put these videos on your website. I can do that for criminal defendants. When I send out, you remember how I told you we use the calendar as well. We use the same digital calendar to send text and email reminders to criminal defendants to cut down on failures to appear, because we issue warrants and attachments when people fail to appear. So I can use the same technology to send a link to a video that says, hey, look, you have court coming up. Make sure that you're on time. Make sure that you know how to dress properly. Make sure if you're missing anything, you can get the information you need from the public defender's office or from your attorney. Here are the phone numbers. Here are the links to the website so that you can actually go through your plea of guilty form if that's of interest to you. If you were in court last time, this is what was discussed with the court. Here was the plea offer. Make sure that you click this form, talk to your lawyer about this, and then you can come prepared. And that can actually help with the backlog as well. And literally, I can do this for under $1,000 a year in any jurisdiction tomorrow.
I love the undertone of service in what you just shared, because our justice system is really not designed to be of service. Yep. It's of service to people who are educated and have money. And, that's by definition not inclusive of everyone, not the function of justice. What you just described is essentially taking the stuff, translating it to 8th grader English in the form that is consumable, say a video, and really not legal advice, as you said, just instructions that an average human that could be incarcerated or could be liable for a ton of money could understand, and really serving that human to make sure that they are, doing things in an informed manner. Because I think many of us are capable of making right decisions if we fully understand what the choices are and implications of them. So that's very interesting. I love that. But you also mentioned deep fakes. And there's a lot of concern about deep fakes, which is, I want to decouple from the service component that you just mentioned. You're not the only person who mentioned the concern for deep fakes. I mean, FTC is now doing this massive study about voice technology. This is all the way to the federal everything. So I'm curious, how scary is this really? Is this really a challenge? You are. So, tell me, what are your views on this?
Yeah, if you've read, you get my newsletter and you see all my LinkedIn posts, deep fakes scare the heck out of me as a judge. Today's, we always had photoshopping, we always had that, but you had to know what you were doing. You don't need to know what you're doing in today's world because the technology is there. They have free versions, they have very inexpensive versions. And, the video doesn't concern me as much today. You can still see, if you go to, my website, judgeschlegel.com, I have examples of deep fakes. There's still something off about the video deep fakes. But if you listen to, my podcast, Tech and Gavel, it's voice clone. You cannot, look, you can tell sometimes I'm not working too hard at it to try and, get it perfect. But voice cloning scares me. Can you imagine somebody coming in to court, which happens all day long, looking for a protective order because somebody is threatening them? And it's actually nothing more than a clone of my voice. And because I know that person, I can give ChatGPT or any of these LLMs information that is real. Where you live, the children's names, the dog's name, where you were on Thursday, and feed a script and build a script with ChatGPT and then feed that into a voice cloning, leave it as a voicemail on my phone and play that in court or to the magistrate or the judge about to issue a TRO, temporary restraining order, or protective order. And it sounds like me threatening my wife, and I'm going to kill her. I'm going to take the kids. I'm going to kill the dog. That's scary. And when you issue a TRO from the court's perspective, we're taking firearms away. We're taking children away. We're putting you into a protective order registry. This is real stuff. And that's really what concerns me, especially with the audio. Who's the experts? Who are going to tell me that that's not correct? And I can clone your phone number. It scares me from an evidentiary standpoint. Just that simple example scares the heck out of me.
Yeah. But coming to the end, I do want to talk a little bit more about deepfakes because it is scary. And I think and that's why FTC is studying it. They essentially have a contest of who's going to explain this technology to us better, with money attached and everything, I believe, and bragging rights. And you're right, things like TROs and protective orders, they take away things that people hold near and dear to their heart, whether it's a wife or firearms, whatever rocks your boat, right? Or children or a dog. And when you are present, and evidence is key because you don't have a full hearing on those issues. It basically comes down, what is the potential of harm and how credible the evidence. And so by definition, you are making decisions on a small amount of information, which is already kind of recognized in law that it is a scary place to be. And now you live in a world where you can fabricate things that are highly believable. So what do you do now? You're the judge, you don't want your legacy to be, you're a human first, as you admitted. You want to get up in the morning and still be excited to live with yourself and do everything you can to prevent harm and all of that. What do you do then? How do you present it with recording that could be a deep fake? And if you really, today technology is not good enough, you can spot things kind of like you would spot in pictures, like if you look at ears or hands, because those are really hard to manipulate. But at some point, technology is going to get better. What do we do?
That's why I talk about this stuff. That's why I write about this stuff. That's why I do these shows, because I need people thinking about this. And, at the end of the day, I think it's going to take, it's going to be a very heavy lift. Let's put it that way. Because look, if I issue a TRO, you need to set the hearing within, let's say 10 days. That doesn't give people enough time to subpoena phone records to see that the number was cloned. It still doesn't give people the opportunity. Who are the experts, by the way? When are we going to start going through the Daubert hearings and saying you're an expert in this and you're an expert in that? And the courts are now going to have to determine who are experts in digital forensics regarding voice cloning. These are real challenges that the court's going to have to deal with and face as we get closer and further down this road. I still think it's new enough where this is not happening yet. but it will, and it will start happening. So that's a real challenge that we just have to continue to work through and think through. I don't have the answer, unfortunately, on how to go from there.
Yeah, I didn't say it's going to be an easy conversation. I just said we're going to have fun, remember?
Yeah, absolutely.
What, given that we're in the very beginning of it, and I do think actually as technology gets better at it, there will be experts that rise with it and technology that helps us to deal with deepfakes as well. So all of that hopefully will be timed around the same time so we can actually get better at it. What can, when you are a judge, you're essentially a fearless leader of that courtroom. You have folks who look up to you and respect you and you trying to do the right thing. In the end of the day, every judge I know wants to do the right thing. And what are the things you can start doing today as a judge, as an officer of the court, as a lawyer, to ensure that, there's ethical use of AI in the courtroom, or, we're doing basic things to make sure that decisions we make are as good as they intended to be, and they're not misinformed or misguided because we are poor users or don't understand technology well enough?
I'd say the same thing. Just educate yourself. And I think we're going to have to start flipping the script a little bit and holding lawyers more accountable for the evidence that they attempt to introduce. I think that if I was a practicing lawyer today and I was in a domestic case, or any case for that matter, and my clients were giving me a voice recording or a photograph or a video that purports to be a certain something, I think lawyers are going to have to start challenging their clients a little bit more on this point, because, again, we're provided with evidence and we're provided with a small snapshot of what's coming before us. And so we have to do the best job we can with the evidence presented to us. And I think that the lawyers are going to have to, again, start looking a little bit harder before they attempt to introduce evidence into the record. It'd be interesting to see if part of the hardware, if it's developed, is that we implement in courtrooms is, hey, if you feed that audio file through our system, it'll be able to look for the hashtags that are quote unquote fake or not real. And that's something that's as a thought exercise that I have, is when you're playing something through our systems, if the technology gets developed to spot a fake as opposed to before you're able to introduce it. I don't know. Again, just
essentially authentication sort of basic mechanism, right? That the detector of some sort. And it sounds like we probably will be revising the evidentiary rules and rules of civil procedure as well. I think that may need to be adjusted as well, formally, or maybe at the courtroom level. This has been a fantastic conversation. We've covered a lot of ground, from the future of law to practice in the courtroom to the way we can do it better, to deepfakes, to being scared, to being optimistic, to being hopeful. What is one thing you want folks to take away from this conversation?
Start today. This is a big topic. Technology and the law is a big topic. So I would say find just a single workflow that you're dealing with, whether you're a lawyer or a judge. Find that one workflow. Calendaring is the easiest one, and just start today and figure out how to start slowly implementing technology. Because as you mentioned earlier, that I've said before, I think it's a necessity that we continue to modernize the justice system. We need to make the justice system more efficient, more effective, and more accessible. And I propose that technology is the way that we do that. So start today, and don't be afraid to fail, because you will. It's very difficult. It's very challenging. But if you start today, I guarantee you in a week, you'll be better off. In 2 weeks, a year, 3 years, 5 years. And then in 10 years, hopefully we have the justice system that we've always dreamt of. But let's get to the 20th century. How about that? How about we start there?
Yes, to the 20th century and beyond. I am really excited and grateful for this conversation. I am optimistic that law will be of service in our lifetime. I look forward to that day. Thank you so much, Judge, for being a wonderful, great guest and graciously agreeing to be part of this conversation. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Until next time. Bye.
And that brings us to the end of another thrilling episode on the Notes to My Legal Self AI Insights. We had a fantastic time exploring the fascinating intersection of law and AI with you. But hold on tight, because the adventure doesn't stop here. Stay connected with us on social media to continue the conversation, share your thoughts, and be part of our incredible community of legal enthusiasts. Together, we can inspire, learn, and make a real impact on the world of law and AI. If you enjoyed today's episode, we encourage you to share it with your friends, colleagues, and anyone else who could benefit from the exciting insights we discussed. Let's spread the knowledge and enthusiasm far and wide.